Georgia has rich and still vibrant traditional music, which is primarily known as arguably the earliest polyphonic tradition of the Christian world. Situated on the border of Europe and Asia, Georgia is also the home of a variety of urban singing styles with a mixture of native polyphony, Middle Eastern monophony and late European harmonic languages. Georgian performers are well represented in the world's leading opera troupes and concert stages. Folk music. The folk music of Georgia consists of at least 15 regional styles, known in Georgian musicology and ethnomusicology as musical dialects. According to Edisha Garakanidze, there are 16 regional styles in Georgia. These 16 regions are traditionally grouped into two Eastern and Western Georgian groups. The Eastern Georgian group of musical dialects consists of the two biggest regions of Georgia, Kartli and Kakheti, several smaller northeast Georgian mountain regions, Kavshurati, Savi, Tasheti, Kavi, Shaleti, Gudamakari, and a southern Georgian region, Mesketi. Table songs from Kakheti in eastern Georgia usually feature a long droned bass with two soloists singing the top two parts. Perhaps the most well-known example of music in Kakhetian style is the patriotic Chakrulo, which was chosen to accompany the Voyager spacecraft in 1977. Known performers from the northeastern region Kavshurati are the singers Dato Kenchiashvili and Tiona Kumziashvili. The Western Georgian group of musical dialects consists of the central region of Western Georgia, Imereti, three mountainous regions, Svaneti, Racha and Lekumi, and three Black Sea coastal regions, Samegrelo, Guria, and Achara. Georgian regional styles of music are sometimes also grouped into mountain and plain groups. Different scholars distinguish musical dialects differently. For example, some do not distinguish Gudamakari and Lekumi as separate dialects, and some consider Kartli and Kakheti to be separate dialects. Two more regions, Siangilo and Lezti, are sometimes also included in the characteristics of Georgian traditional music. Traditional vocal polyphony. Georgian folk music is predominantly vocal and is widely known for its rich traditions of vocal polyphony. It is widely accepted in contemporary musicology that polyphony in Georgian music predates the introduction of Christianity in Georgia. All regional styles of Georgian music have traditions of vocal a cappella polyphony, although in the most southern regions only historical sources provide the information about the presence of vocal polyphony before the 20th century. Vocal polyphony based on ostinato formulas and rhythmic drone are widely distributed in all Georgian regional styles. Apart from these common techniques, there are also other, more complex forms of polyphony. Pedal drone polyphony in eastern Georgia, particularly in Kartli and Kakheti table songs, and contrapuntal polyphony in Achara, Imereti, Samegrelo, and particularly in Guria. Western Georgian contrapuntal polyphony features the local variety of the yodel, known as Kremanchli. Both East and West Georgian polyphony is based on wide use of sharp dissonant harmonies. Because of the wide use of the specific chord consisting of the fourth and a second on top of the fourth, the founder of Georgian ethnomusicology, Dmitry Arakashvili, called this chord the Georgian triad. Georgian music is also known for colorful modulations and unusual key changes. Georgian polyphonic singing was among the first on the list of masterpieces of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity in 2001. Georgian polyphonic singing was relisted on the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2008. Scales and tuning system. There are different, sometimes conflicting views on the nature of Georgian scales. The most prevalent is the view expressed by Vladimir Gogitashvili, who suggested distinguishing diatonic scales based on a system of perfect fourths and those based on a system of perfect fifths. A system based on perfect fourths is mostly present in eastern Georgia, but scales based on perfect fifths are spread wider, both in eastern and particularly western Georgia, as well as in Georgian Christian chants. In East Georgian table songs, the scale system is based on a combination of the systems of fourth and fifth diatonic scales. In such songs, the principle of the fourth diatonic scale is working above the pedal drone, and the system of the fifth diatonic is working under the pedal drone. Because of the peculiarity of the scale system based on perfect fifths, there is often an augmented octave in Georgian songs and church songs. As in many traditional musical systems, tuning of Georgian scales is not based on the European equally tempered 12-tone tuning system. The fifth is usually perfect, but the second, third and fourth are different from European intervals, producing a slightly compressed major second, a neutral third, and a slightly stretched fourth. Likewise, between the fifth and the octave come two evenly spaced notes, producing a slightly compressed major sixth and a stretched minor seventh. Because of the strong influence of Western European music, present-day performers of Georgian folk music often employ Western tuning, bringing the seconds, fourths, sixths, and sevenths, and sometimes the thirds as well, closer to the standard equally tempered scale. This process started from the very first professional choir, organized in Georgia in 1886. For the 1980s, some ensembles have tried to reintroduce the original non-tempered traditional tuning system. In some regions, some traditional singers still sing in the old, non-tempered tuning system. Social setting. Singing is mostly a community activity in Georgia, and during big celebrations all the community is expected to participate in singing. Traditionally, top melodic parts are performed by individual singers, but the bass can have dozens or even hundreds of singers. There are also songs that require a very small number of performers. Out of them, the tradition of trio is very popular in western Georgia, particularly in Guria. Georgian folk songs are often centered around banquet-like feasts called supra, where songs and toasts to God, peace, motherland, long life, love, friendship and other topics are proposed. Traditional feast songs include Samtari, which is about the transient nature of life and is sung to commemorate ancestors, and a great number of Maraval Samia songs. As many traditional activities greatly changed the nature, the traditional feast became the harbor for many different genres of music. Work songs are widespread in all regions. The Orovela, for example, is a specific solo work song found in eastern Georgia only. The extremely complex 3- and 4-part working song Nadia is characteristic of western Georgia. There are a great number of healing songs, funerary ritual songs, wedding songs, love songs, dance songs, lullabies, traveling songs. Many archaic songs are connected to round dances. Contemporary Georgian stage choirs are generally male, though some female groups also exist. Mixed-gender choirs are rare, but also exist. At the same time, in village ensembles mixed participation is more common, and according to Zakaria Palyashvili, in the most isolated region of Georgia, Upper Svaneti, mixed performance of folk songs were a common practice. Performance practices. Georgian vocal polyphony was maintained for millennia by village singers, mostly local farmers. For the end of the 19th century to the beginning of the 20th century, a great number of gramophone recordings of Georgian village singers were made. Anzor Erkomishvili was paramount in recovering these recordings and reissuing them on a series of CDs. Despite the poor technical quality of the old recordings, they often serve as the model of high mastery of the performance of Georgian traditional songs for contemporary ensembles. During the Soviet period, folk music was highly praised, and revered folk musicians were awarded with governmental prizes and were given salaries. At the same time, some genres were forbidden, and the tendency to create huge regional choirs with big groups singing each melodic part damaged the improvisatory nature of Georgian folk music. Also, singing and dancing, usually closely interconnected in rural life, were separated on a concert stage. For the 1950s and the 1960s, new type of ensembles brought back the tradition of smaller ensembles and improvisation. Since the 1970s, Georgian folk music has been introduced to a wider audience in different countries around the world. The ensembles Rustavi and later Georgian voices were particularly active in presenting rich polyphony of various regions of Georgia to Western audiences. Georgian voices performed alongside Billy Joel, and the Rustavi choir was featured on the soundtrack to Coen Brothers' film The Big Lebowski. During the end of the 1960s and 1970s, an innovative pop ensemble Orira featured a mixture of traditional polyphony with jazz and other popular musical genres, becoming arguably the most popular ensemble of the Soviet Union in the 1970s. This line of fusion of Georgian folk polyphony with other genres became popular in the 1990s, and the Stuttgart-based ensemble The Shin became a popular representative of this generation of Georgian musicians. For the middle of the 1980s, the first ensembles of Georgian music consisting of non-Georgian performers started to appear outside of Georgia. This process became particularly active after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. When the Iron Curtain disappeared and travel to the Western countries became possible for Georgians. Today it is a common practice for Georgian ensembles and traditional singers to visit Western countries for performances and workshops. See Performers of Georgian Traditional Music, Study of Georgian Folk Music. The 1861 article by Jumbakur Orbiliani and the 1864 article by Machabeli are considered as the first published works where some aspect of Georgian folk music were discussed. Earlier works discussed Georgian church singing traditions only. Dmitry Arakashvili and Zakaria Palyashvili are considered the most influential figures of study of Georgian folk music. Arakashvili published several standard books and articles on Georgian singing traditions, musical instruments, scales, and is widely considered as founding father of Georgian ethnomusicology. Grigol Shkigvadze and Shalva Aslanishvili, born during the last years of the 19th century, received professional education in Russia and became important figures of the study of Georgian traditional music. The historian Ivan Javakashvili published an influential work on the history of Georgian music, which is still considered as the most comprehensive work on historical sources on Georgian music. Otar Chiavadze, Valerian Magradze, Kaki Rozbashvili, Mindiev Jordania, Kukuri Chokonladze were the first Georgian scholars that were educated in Georgia and contributed to the study of different aspects of Georgian folk music. For the end of the 20th century, a new generation of Georgian ethnomusicologists appeared, among them Edisha Garikanidze, Joseph Jordania, Nato Zimbadze, Nino Tsishvili, Tamaz Gabasonia, Nino Makaradze, David Shuliashvili, Makakardziani. Apart from Georgian scholars, non-Georgian musicians and scholars also contributed to the study of Georgian traditional music. Among them were German and Austrian scholars Adolf Deer, Robert Lach, Georg Schunnemann, and Siegfried Nadel, who were able to record and study traditional songs from Georgian war prisoners during the First World War. Siegfried Nadel published a monograph about Georgian music, where he proposed that Georgian polyphony possibly contributed to the emergence of European professional polyphony. Russian musicians Ippolitov Ivanov and Klenovsky also contributed to the early study of Georgian folk music. Russian scholar Stashenko Kuftina contributed a highly revered monograph on Georgian panpipe. After the fall of the Soviet Union, a number of Western scholars started working on Georgian folk music, mostly on different aspects of the traditional polyphony. Among them Karl Linek, Stuart Gelser, Suzanne Ziegler, Simha Arom, Polo Vallejo, John A. Grimm, Lauren Ninoshvili, Caroline Bethel, and Andrea Kuzmich. In the 21st century, Georgia has become one of the international centers of the study of the phenomenon of traditional polyphony. In 2003, the International Research Center for Traditional Polyphony was established. The tradition of biannual conferences and symposia started in Georgia in the 1980s. These symposia are drawing leading experts of traditional polyphony to Georgia. Urban music. Urban music must have started as soon as the first cities appeared in Georgia. Tbilisi became the capital of Georgia in the 5th century, and was known as the cultural center of Caucasus. Tbilisi was on the important routes connecting the east with the west, as well as the north with the south. This strategic position was attracting various ethnic groups, and Tbilisi early became a cosmopolitan city with many languages and many musical styles mixed together. Out of different styles, the Middle Eastern monophony with augmented seconds, sensual melodies and instrumental accompaniment were particularly popular. There are not very early historical sources about Georgian urban music, but at least Georgian kings of the 17th and 18th centuries had Middle Eastern-style professional musicians serving at their courts. One of them, the great Armenian musician Sayat Nova, served as a court musician of the King Erikl II, and was composing songs in Georgian, Armenian, and Azeri languages. The popularity of this style of music was particularly great by the end of the 19th century, when mostly agricultural Georgians were not attracted to the big cities, and businessmen from other countries became the majority of the city population. At the same time, the polyphonic nature of Georgian music influenced monophonic melodies of the Armenian, Turkish and Iranian origin, and they became polyphonic. From the second part of the 19th century, a new popular musical style came to Georgia. This was European classical music, based on parallel thirds and triadic harmonies. Opening of the opera in 1950 had a profound influence on Georgian urban societies, and soon a new style songs became very popular. The new European style of Georgian urban music consists of two genres: a cappella choral singing in 3 vocal parts, and solo singing with the accompaniment of musical instrument. Professional music. Professional music in Georgia existed at least from the 7th–8th centuries, when Georgian composers started translating Greek Orthodox Christian chants, adding harmonies to the monophonic melodies, and also were creating original chants. It is widely accepted that polyphony in Georgian church singing came from the folk tradition. Georgian church music has many parallels with Georgian traditional music, although some elements of folk musical style were never used in church singing. The polyphonic mastery and the use of sharp dissonances reaches its climax. The study of church singing was strictly forbidden in the Soviet Union. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, this became one of the most actively researched spheres of Georgian musicology. The so-called New Georgian Professional Musical School started in the second half of the 19th century. It was based on European classical musical language and classical musical forms. The greatest representatives of this school of Georgian composers merge European musical language with the elements of Georgian traditional harmony and polyphony. Among the composers of the later period were Andrea Balanchevadze, brother of George Balanchine, Alexei Machavriani, Shalvarem Shvalidze, Otar Taktakashvili. The most prominent contemporary Georgian composer is Antwerp-based Gia Kancheli. Traditional musical instruments. A wide variety of musical instruments are known from Georgia. Among the most popular instruments are blown instruments sonari, known in Samegrelo as larchemi, staviri, gudastviri, sting instruments chungi, chonguri, panduri, baudchaniri, known also as kianuri, and variety of drums. Georgian musical instruments are traditionally overshadowed by the rich vocal traditions of Georgia, and subsequently received much less attention from Georgian scholars. Dmitry Arakashvili and particularly Manyana Shilikadze contributed to the study of musical instrument in Georgia chaniri kianuri. Only the mountain inhabitants of Georgia preserve the baudchaniri in its original form. This instrument is considered to be a national instrument of Svaneti and is thought to have spread in the other regions of Georgia from there. Chaniri has different names in different regions. In Kovshurati, Tasheti its name is Chaniri, and in Racha, Guria, Kianuri, Chaniri is used for accompaniment. It is often played in an ensemble with Changi and Salamuri. Both men and women played it. Accompaniment of solo songs, national heroic poems and dance melodies were performed on it in Svaneti. Chaniri and Changi are often played together in an ensemble when performing polyphonic songs. More than one kianuri at a time is not used. Kianuri is kept in a warm place. Often, especially in rainy days, it was warmed in the sun or near a fireplace before using, in order to emit more harmonious sounds. This fact is acknowledged in all regions where the fiddlestick instruments were spread. That is done generally because dampness and wind make a certain effect on the instrument's resonant body and the leather that covers it. In Svaneti and Racha, people even could make a weather forecast according to the sound produced by kianuri. Weak and unclear sounds were the signs of a rainy weather. The instrument's side strings I, E, first and third strings are tuned in fourth, but the middle string is tuned in third with the lowest string and second with the top string. It was a tradition to play chaniri late in the evening the day before a funeral. For instance, one of the relatives of a dead person would sit down in open air by the bonfire and play a sad melody. In his song he would remember the life of the deceased person and the lives of ancestors of the family. Most of the songs performed on kianuri are connected with sad occasions. There is an expression in Svaneti that chaniri is for sorrow. However, it can be used at parties as well. The abkhaza is a two-string musical instrument which is played by a bow. It is thought to have spread through Georgia from the region of Abkhazia. Mostly the abkhaza is used as an accompaniment instrument. There are performed 1, 2 or 3-part songs and national heroic poems on it. Abkhaza is cut out of a whole wood piece and has a shape of a boat. Its overall length is 480 millimeters. Its upper board is glued back to the main part. On the end it has two tuners.